Hey guys, it's Abel Ramos and Jackie Potter. We're going to be presenting our market update for April 2024 here in Santa Barbara. What took place last month in comparison to 2023 and what we believe is on the horizon for the rest of the year. So that being said, Jackie's going to take us through the highest and lowest sales last month.
Some exciting highs here. We had 595 Picacho Lane, which originally was on the market for $36 million, dropped to 33, and just sold in April for $30 million. That's a really beautiful Montecito estate. I mean, that's like one of those legacy estates. It was recently remodeled, so it's a very nice mix of classy, but also, you know, all the new and contemporary style. Everything about it was beautiful. I could see why that would go. I guess for $30 million.
$30 million.
And then the lowest sale was actually that same El Zoco building
From last month.
Sold from last month. So I don't know. People are offloading there. People are getting in with a good steal. I think that was like $300,000, something around that.
That's the one that's the low income.
Yeah, low income.
Yeah. Okay,
so interesting.
Yeah, I'm going into the median numbers here for our market. Last month we had 111 sales, right?
Yeah.
Total sales.
Yeah.
Condos and single family together.
Right. Up 11 from last month, and actually one of the highest numbers of sales we've seen
In quite some time. Yeah, the last at least
year.
14 year and a half, call it. For us to be well below our, norm in Santa Barbara, even going back pre-2020, 111 is still pretty slow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're seeing those transactions come back, which is great, but obviously that could be because there's more inventory coming to market.
Yeah, we do have a little bit more inventory. It was kind of interesting to me. Only one extra sale condos. The other 10 sales were all single family. So.
Out of the 11 increase for last month? Got it.
So I think you're seeing a lot more single family action. If you look back on condos in general, price has kind of been slowly dipping a little bit, and sales.
I've seen more condos sit too on the market. Yeah, for sure. For sure. But going back to that though, inventory has increased.
Up.
I feel like I've seen a good amount. Obviously there's been a lot of high-end inventory that's come, which is still moving, which is wild. But I feel like I've seen a lot more affordable inventory come up in Goleta this last month too.
Agree. I think that there's
1.3, 1.5. Not lasting long, but
I was gonna say, you look at it in a week's time.
It's gone.
And when you're sitting in the office meeting talking to people, it's 6 offers, it's 10 offers. It's not as far over asking as we were seeing. We were just kind of
talking about that. Yeah.
It's maybe not $500,000 over asking to secure it, but multiple offers and still, $100,000, $200,000 over on some of these.
I think some have actually even been less, which is great because again, when it comes to that first-time home buyer trying to get in at anything under 1.5, let's call it.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough. But to see, hopefully, there's some light at the end of the tunnel with overbidding not being 100 or 200 grand.
Right.
It could be maybe 30, 40 grand. That's doable for some people.
It's doable, especially when you are competing against 50% cash market. So that's the biggest we've seen in South Santa Barbara County as a total. I think it's important to mention in Montecito and Hope Ranch
could
during
be way
COVID,
over 50%.
It was over that, but as South Santa Barbara County total, 50% cash market is the highest we've seen.
And we always round up on here, so you'll hear us say, "Oh, it's close to 50%," and that's usually because it's in the high 40s. But this is the official,
seeing a 50,
50% of the 111 transactions were cash.
Yeah.
So still a lot of money coming to our market, in our market. A lot of people will always try to argue that with me or just have that conversation of they feel the Santa Barbara market's overvalued. Sure. I mean, I could agree with you on some of these things that sell for the prices they do. It's wow, that definitely seems like a lot of money. But at the end of the day, people are paying cash for these properties. So it's just the way it is here.
Yeah,
I don't know what other way to say it.
It's overvalued if you're just looking at other numbers, but
Yeah, there's a lot more that goes into into that conversation.
Like the people
but,
paying this amount see that it's priceless.
Yeah, they're coming from somewhere else.
Living here is priceless.
Yeah, they're coming from somewhere else, comparing what their life looked like in another city and what they believe it will look like here. Agreed, for sure.
That's where value is based. It's not as much a numbers game here.
Right.
That's the truth of the matter. That's why you see 50% of these are people paying millions of dollars in cash
Yeah.
because of securing something that they do feel is invaluable for their family. I mean, that's how real estate is. Some of it's numbers and some of it is emotion. And
Exactly.
here we're super emotionally based.
So kind of going into the market a little bit more, our average days on market for single family homes around 30 days.
Yep.
Condos were around 22. I don't know the exact number, but I believe when we were talking about just that affordable price point, I want to say it was like maybe 10 days
Yeah,
for
I think it was
anything
like
under
10,
1.5.
16,
Yeah,
something like that.
really like half the time of what the average is here.
Yeah.
Like they move really quick. So if you are thinking about buying, and if you hear an agent or us tell you, you really should get approved first, or you really should, really focus on getting your financial situation settled
Ready to
before
go.
even looking, because things move quickly. Here's the data to back that up. We're not making that up. Like
Yeah.
you need to be prepared or you will lose
Yeah.
in this market because things go really quickly. So
Yeah.
going into our single family homes, up so far this year, we're at what, 2.2, $2,225,000 for a single family home.
Yeah.
And condos, we're at what?
Like
million?
a little above $1 million.
Okay.
Yeah, $1,080,000, I think, and that's slightly above last month by like $30,000 or something. And then, generally, I think condos we're seeing kind of pittering.
Yeah, I feel like there's more fluctuation in price there on the condos. I mean, because some have hit pretty high prices,
Yeah.
right? Because you're factoring in 7% interest rate or more, right? A high price of $1 million or more. And then you got to factor in the HOA fee. And that's one thing I've noticed is a lot of HOA fees now, I would say, are starting above $600 a month.
Yeah, easy.
Like someone asked me the
5
other
on
day.
the low end.
They were like, what do you think the average HOA fee in town is? I was like, if I had to shoot just from the hip, I would say it'd probably be around $650.
Yeah, I was gonna say 700.
So you
I
factor
toured-
all that
yeah.
in together, that condo payment's probably pretty expensive.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. You
You
have
know?
to, and you never know. I mean, that's one of the things that does change when your monthly payment, when you're considering monthly payment, is that HOA fee is probably
It
going
does
to go up next year.
For sure. No doubt, right? And then for me, it's like, well, what are the amenities for that price? Like, what am
That's
I-
why I'm on my HOA
What am I
board,
really
exactly.
getting for that
I was like,
price, right?
I'm
'Cause-
paying close to $1,000 to have an HOA. What are we getting?
What do you get for that, right? It's wild. So I can understand why you see more fluctuation in the condos. Yes, more affordable, but
Yeah.
when you factor in that interest rate, I don't know. I mean, not the interest rate, I'm sorry, the HOA fee. I don't know how much more affordable they really are. But kind of leading into another stat here that we thought was important. So out of those 111, year to date in 2024, we've had almost 30% of the transactions
Yeah.
that have taken place year to date in 2024. 30% have sold over the asking price. That's a really cool figure to know because I
Yeah.
feel like during COVID, I felt like 100% of the
100,
listings
yeah.
sold over the asking
Yeah.
price, right? And it was just so hard to gauge or even advise a client, what type of offer to write because no one had a clue.
Again, it was so emotionally based. You get somebody who's going to just throw $500,000 to just win it.
I almost feel like that's kind of what the conversation was like. It was like, well, how bad do you want the house? Yeah.
Now I think we have a lot more data that's consistent and it gives us more accurate picture on how to navigate that situation,
For sure. And then when you factor in, I mean, we can bring this graph up on the screen. I don't know the exact number, but I know it's above 60% when you calculate the change in median sales price
Yeah.
from the start of COVID-19 to the end of 2020. I would say even now, 2020, where we're at year to date,
Right.
2024, it's probably up 60+%.
Yeah.
So even if you did overpay at that time, $500,000, you're probably up quite a bit still.
Yeah.
So that's where the people really
Yeah.
ended up winning was a long-term play. Like, hey, I'm buying this and I'm going to stay here granted, long-term, it's only been a few years. But if they continue to stay there, it's only going to be better for them. So
sure.
they just got in while they could.
Totally. And I think when we talk about the opportunity for homeowners or people possibly selling, I wanted to bring up just the sale to list price ratio.
Yeah, where are we at?
I think it's interesting. I'll pull up the one where we are now so you can see, and then we'll pull up the one from COVID times to just kind of give you an accurate picture on
What we were faced with.
on what we were faced with and why. Sure, it's gone down to 98%. So there's
Still pretty solid.
There's
though, I
a
mean.
drop off a little bit. On this graph, it'll look a little bit major, but again, I'll pull up COVID. we were starting our graph at above 100%. So to have, I mean, what's the highest here? That looks
almost
like,
108.
yeah, probably one.
And there were some listings that went over 108%
for sure.
too. For sure, this is just average.
The average.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to see, you know, most people are still getting their list price, or 30% are getting over that. Those, from our experience being out here, I mean, those are the ones that are priced really well. Those are the ones that have a great presentation.
Right.
Those are the ones you walk in and immediately you're like, oh, this is going to go.
So things do go over the asking price, not as much as they once did, but if the strategy's still there and it's priced well, presented well, like there is a 30% chance, right, is what we're saying, that your house could go over the asking price, basically, looking at the data. One thing I think that's important to note here, just because we make these videos, whether you're a seller or a buyer, it's like, I think we were just talking about this off camera right now. It's like, well, what is the real incentive to buy right now?
Yeah.
Why is it even worth buying?
Like, what does all this really
What does this really mean?
What do you
like,
do with this?
When we make these videos, it's not like we make them just because like we need to make them. We try to be helpful and like make sure we're giving good information.
Yeah.
But the question that came up when we were talking about all this was like, what does this really mean? Like, why do people even care?
How does this help them make a
How does
decision?
this even help them make a decision? So I'm thinking that right now as we're making this. And one thing I can say, just because you brought up these two graphs, which is great to compare, the experience of buying now versus what it was in COVID is so much better.
Yeah.
Because you're not in those, 30% of the listings are selling over the asking price. Okay, cool. But I mean, if we track this, which would be too hard to track, but if we did, I would honestly say during that COVID craze, I would say maybe 75% of the listings were removing all contingencies, were removing most of the contingencies.
Yeah.
Like the risk people were taking during that market was so risky, and to advise a client to do that was just,
and it was quick.
it was so like, hard. Yeah, and we'll close in 7 days. Like you didn't even have
think
time
if you
to
really
wait.
wanted to make that risk.
So one thing I'm just thinking about right now is it's such a more pleasant experience going back to the real estate we're doing now. It's
if
very
you were
pleasant.
prepped and ready, you can still feel like you're not pushed into something. You know, if you have that pre-approval, or if you have the cash ready, if you have your team in place, you're all working symbiotically. Even though days on market is still under a month, you're going to be in a position where you, like you said, you can put your contingencies in, you can protect your earnest money deposit, you can protect your investment, you can learn about your home and the future of maintenance.
And the investigations,
Investigations, you can plan for things, and you can feel like good buying a home.
For sure.
You know?
So I would say that's probably the biggest benefit.
I think that's really important that not a lot of people touch on, is the
like we're
literal experience
the
that
experience is such more pleasant. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. Much more pleasant of an experience.
Totally.
And it's just the exact opposite of what you were having to experience when everyone was wanting to buy.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I would say about that, we can pull up another graph here for you, which is probably going to be a price trend or a price history of the Santa Barbara market. Interest rates are high. I get it. Prices are high. Totally get it. Will they come down? Sure, they'll come down at some point in time, but who knows? Like, I'm tired of speculating on when we think prices are going to come down or when we think the interest rate's going to come down.
An event will happen for sure.
It always happens.
Events happen.
Look at these graphs. There's always ups and downs.
Yeah.
You can't time that. No one knows. And
Or
if you're
plan.
saying you know, you're full of shit. Like, no one knows. But the one thing that's true about this business is that people will always buy based on timing in their life and life events that take place.
Yeah.
You know, divorce or, you know, like having another kid or
marriage.
getting married. Yeah, exactly, right? And if your plan is to be there long term, look at this graph and see what the price has done over a long snapshot in time.
Yeah.
And if you always hold, you will always be up.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you sell when things are bad, I understand people may have to. I get that. It's out of your control. It's out of everyone's control. But if you hold during those times, you will always be up.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
You know? So anyway, I feel like that's enough for this month's market update. If you have any questions or if there's anything you guys want to know more about, you know, the stats for April or something we didn't touch on.
Or gamify your plan. Figure out, you have a goal of getting into a home. You have a year or whatever, a couple years where you're deciding. Let's figure out if it works for you.
For sure. Especially come August where you're going to have to interview agents as a buyer. I mean, give us a call and interview us. Like, we'd love to talk to you about all this stuff and get you set up on a winning strategy.
Absolutely.
To tackle the market.
Yep.
Cool.
All right.
So that's it, guys. Thanks so much for this month's, tuning in for this month's market update. I'm Abel Ramos with Compass. This is Jackie Potter with Compass. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.